If we had more balanced archetypes, would this actually help the game in the long term? There's already people out there that have bought, will buy, and will continue to buy cards in an attempt to try to make certain decks slash archetypes work as is. And if Konami decided to walk them through the shit, they might not like that. There are some people out there that like the challenge of making something work on their own. I am not this type of motherfucker, but I am familiar with enough motherfuckers that are. But the problem is, a lot of these archetypes are just unsupported. And if you're playing those cards that's within an archetype in a deck, they might end up sharing something with other cards, and those other cards are probably better than those cards within an archetype. So generally, you would be better off just using generic support over those cards within an archetype. We're going to talk about Shira motherfucking Nui. It's good and bad that Shiranui is zombies. You got fucking Uni Zombie, Mizuki, Goblin Zombie, Book of Life, Zombie World, whole bunch of other shit, which is good. Yeah, but if you've ever looked at a deck list, it is mainly generic zombie support. The only Shiranui card that will more likely see you play outside of his archetype is Swallow Slash. They made that shit a common. Oh my god. But you have to have a Shiranui to banish to activate Swallow Slash, unless I'm mistaken. So if you're playing zombies and you're playing Swallow Slash, you're somewhat forced to play a Shiranui monster just because of Swallow Slash being so good. If you didn't get the fucking point by now, the generic zombie support is supporting Shiranui. That defeats the whole fucking purpose of creating an archetype, especially one that shares a monster type with other generic stuff with that same type. What if you decided to just play Shiranui monsters, no generic support? You'll be doing a whole lot of nothing. Setting, hoping your opponent doesn't kill you, but they'll end up killing you because games are generally decided 4 or 5 turns, if that. But back to my original point. Theoretically, it would be great if more archetypes got the treatment that others do. You know, shaddolls, tellarknights, hell, even Yang Zing. But it seems like if we got better archetype support for those that are lacking, the challenge or excitement, if you're into that shit, figuring out yourself would be severely diminished. And there's also the problem with people getting used to this treatment and it becomes expected. Obligatory archetype support. I personally like the concept behind newer archetypes. But in the Shiranui case, it defeats the entire purpose of creating an archetype when the deck does not function without 80% of generic cards that have to do with the same type that this archetype is. I don't have a problem with decks that feature a specific archetype playing generic support cards. But if you have too many generic support cards, it's no longer a deck based on that archetype. Generic support is just that. It should not be the vast majority of the deck. If Konami supported other archetypes to the level of shit that I mentioned before, we end up having like a pretty fair amount of archetype decks, whatever shit, in the meta. If we had like 20 archetypes, decks, whatever, that you could more likely see in an event, people might not like that. The higher variance may deter some motherfuckers from playing. Well, entering. You can say whatever the fuck you want about competitive Yugis. It is very, very boring and monotonous. It is easy for people to, what? Side, plan accordingly, whatever shit. And then, of course, there's those motherfuckers that spend a whole bunch of money on the game based on some arbitrary reason because their deck is being the best around or something. They wouldn't like that. I guess I'd be cool with it, but I'm probably the minority. I don't completely dismiss the possibility that Konami will revisit some old ass archetypes like Watts and Iron Chains and some shit. Do I expect it to happen? Fuck no. There's supposed to be something that's obviously more consistent or more explosive. You don't have those things usually within the same deck. If they're doing something really good, there's something they're lacking. Despite its flaws, And Konami choosing not to really change this shit mainly because motherfuckers just be talking and not actually hitting their pockets. I don't see this changing. And even if it did change, it might not have the effect that you expect. That rhymed. So, nigga gotta pay rent every month. I humbly ask you to click at least one advertisement. It helps me make that motherfucker DINERO. Thank you in advance. And if you just happen to have a couple bucks in your PayPal, mine's in the description, feel free to send some my way.